This particular video is actually going to open things up a little bit in the sense that what we're going to do here is introduce other colors. So up to now, I've been trying to encourage you to work with primary colors, and from them mix every other color, which is, as you've probably discovered, it's not easy, but it's a good and important challenge. So what I'm going to do is sort of let the reins off a wee bit. You might be delighted to hear, and allow us to use other colors, and there's a reason for this. The colors you see here in front of you, I'm zoomed in close up just to let you see what's going on. This is actually light red. Now you could use burnt sienna, which is as you know, a reddish brown or an earth color, but I'm using light red simply because I don't have burnt sienna at the moment. But the main thing is you can see there the warmth of that particular earth color. The second one is yellow ochre, and again you can see by its name is a yellow earth color, yellow brown if you want to call it that. The third one here is actually burnt umber, which is a colder earth brown color. You can see that compared to the others. There's a warmth of red, a warmth of yellow here, or whatever, and here there's a much cooler. So we're going to see that as a bluish brown. I know that's sometimes difficult to imagine, but if you see what's going on here, what we really have are three versions of the primary color: red, yellow, blue. So imagine these being earth versions, earth or brown versions, but earth might be a better word to use. Earth version of red, earth version of yellow, and an earth version of a colder blue is maybe a difficult word to accept, but coldness, okay, compared to these. So see them as primary colors. And what we're going to do is make use of these. So in your palette you may have these, you may have tubes of these, and they're going to help us adjust temperature and saturation. These are the two big factors that we've been working on. So what I'm going to do is pause the video, zoom out a little bit so you can see a little bit more then, and try a little exercise. Now what we have is or are the three colors I've just shown you, plus this is actually just a simple cadmium lemon. It could be any color. You could try this with any color, but I thought I'll just work with a very pure, very highly saturated, if you like, lemon color. I'll just spread it around a wee bit more. You can see how rich that is. So what I'm going to do here, take a little piece of this, move it over here, and just take a little bit of the reddish earth, okay, and look how little I'm talking about. Look at that on the palette, how little there is, and I'm just gonna stir that around a little bit. We'll put some on the card over to the right in a wee second. So we'll take that, place a little piece over there, so hopefully you can see that. And I'm just going to clean the palette knife, get some more towels here. I'm one of the messiest people in the world when it comes to painting, and I've never been able to overcome that. I've just sort of accepted I'm messy, basically. There is our second earth primary, let's call it, which is yellow ochre, okay? So we'll do the same here. We'll scoop, actually we'll scoop a lot less of that over there. I don't want so much of that. Because as you probably gathered in the past exercises, tiny amounts of a color change things vastly, and this is one of the mistakes we often make. We throw in colors. Oh yeah, I need to mix green and red together or whatever, and we stir them in like 50-50. Sometimes it's like just a pinch of salt that makes a change. So there's a mixture there I've got using the yellow ochre into my lemon yellow, and we'll just put that just beside the first one. And then what I'm going to do obviously is take the final color, or umber, or colder color if you like, down here, and again, not too much, just put that in there, Stir that well in and place it beside the others. And you may already be seeing the pattern emerging here, but let's just put those three things down. And what I'm going to do is move that slightly out of the way. And look what we've got here. What we've done, we started here with a pure primary sort of yellow, okay, a primary color, I guess. And we've changed it three ways. And what have we done? We've not only drained the yellow, we've made these desaturated. In other words, they're not super rich colors anymore. They're not pure primary colors. So we've desaturated, but we've also changed their temperature, meaning the first one has become a reddish earth color, if you like, reddish desaturated. Second one, yellowish and desaturated. And the third one, blue or cold green. Actually, it would probably lean to green, but blue, but a cold desaturated color. And I suppose if it's possible, if I could put a little smidgen of the original yellow beside each of them, you can see the journey that it took, if you like. So there you can see the changes that have happened. So what we have done is created subtle colors, desaturated, drained out colors, and adjusted their temperature, moved them reddish, orange, yellowish, and greenish, bluish, and so on, because the three colors that we added had those qualities. In other words, that has a red quality, but it's not pure red. It's an earth red. It's a already desaturated, drained out sort of a red. Likewise, that's a drained out desaturated yellow, and that's a drained out desaturated, let's call it a blue color, a cold color. And therefore the result is, or are, those three colors that we've just made. And of course, depending on the amount we add of each of these earth colors, those will change too. So what I'm saying is, up to now, we've been thinking about first of all changing the temperature by adding, say, red or yellow or something, and then desaturating the color with the complementary on our color wheel. In other words, if we had a red, we'd look across and we'd see a wee bit of green and add that. In a way, what we're doing to a point is doing both things in one go by adding some of these earths. Now, it is not, I have to stress, the perfect way to do this, but what it is good for, if you're outside, let's say, or you're painting something and you need to make a change quickly, and look, the yellow I have, it's more of a drained out yellow and it's warmer as well, and those two things, that perhaps instead of doing it in two steps, you can resort, if you like, to using something like a burnt sienna and put that in. Not only have you warmed it, reddened it slightly, but you've also drained the purity out of it with the addition of just one step. But again, a lot rides on the types of color you have here and the earth colors and so on. It's not the scientifically correct way to achieve that necessarily, but it's a very useful way to quickly make those changes. Now, what we're going to do in a moment is have a look at another way to do a similar thing. What we have here is there are three secondary colors. Obviously, secondary colors are green, orange, and violet, purple, if you like. And what I'm going to do is just mix these together. And the reason behind that is it's another way of creating what we call earth colors or neutral colors. In the last little bit of this video, you saw me working with yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and umber, and so on, which are sometimes they're termed brown sometimes, but earth colors may be a better word for them. And sometimes they're called neutral colors, but they're more inclined to be earth colors. So we're going to combine these and see what we get, and I'll explain the reasoning behind this shortly. But let's combine the first two, okay? The yellow here, beg your pardon, the orange, and then we're adding some of the green in here. All right, so I'm going to mix that around. And what we'll do is put this over onto this. Okay, so we can see that the light's catching it, so we'll bring it down a little bit. It's a wee bit better. So you can see that there. I'll just scrape it along so it sort of shows better. Then what we'll do, we'll move down and we'll combine the orange with the purple. Okay, a little bit of this violet, which I've made these colors from primary, so I've tried to get the balance fairly correct here. Okay, and I've added a tiny wee bit of white to the purple, just so we can see it. I mean, that's the only reason, you know. We'll add that in, and we'll just carry that over onto our little thing and scrape it around a wee bit, so you can see the different variations of the color. Okay, and then finally we have the green up here, and a little bit of the purple, violet in there. So that was green and violet. And again, scrape it around so you can sort of see the transparency of it. And what you can see there are 3 earthy or neutral type colors. But what you will notice, of course, is the first one has a slightly more yellowish hint, if you want. This one has a slightly warmer, if anything, redder. This one is a bluish color, a cold color. So I know it's very, very subtle, but what you see is they're dominated by certain colors. This is bluish cold. This is warmer, rustier, redder, if you like. This is yellower, and so on. So what we've done is returned in a way to primaries, but we've made earth versions of the primaries, neutral versions of the primaries. And obviously it depends on how much of these you mix. But what will happen always, if I mix green and I mix orange, green is made from yellow and blue, orange is made from yellow and red. So yellow has a dominance between the two of them, so yellow will come out more prominently. Likewise, if we mix orange, which is made from red and yellow, and we mix purple, which is made from red and blue, red gets 2 bites of the cherry, if you like, and therefore your earth will be more inclined to be warmer, leaning towards the reddish end, depending again on the amount you use. And then if we add green and purple, of course, the common color in both of those is blue. So therefore, we're probably going to get a grey or a neutral, which has a bluish, colder quality to it. So that way, we can actually create earth colors. In other words, we can create colors, variations of those ones that these ones that we looked at the beginning here. If you remember, we looked at, sorry, wrong palette, I'll bring that over for you. You know, there was our sienna or red, you know, light red or whatever it was, yellow ochre and burnt umber. Now, they're not the same, of course. You know, there's a greeniness and so on going on in there. So they're different qualities of earths, neutrals, if you like, you know, but they have similar ability to change color, which I'm going to show you now. So in other words, previously we used the browns, the yellow ochre and the umber to make changes to color. Now what we're going to do is do the same experiment, this time using these 3 colors as our different earthy colors. Okay, so I'm going to make some more of those up, and then we'll add them into the yellow just like we added the last batch and see what we get. Okay, so here are larger batches of the color that I just made up there, and I've labeled them not brilliantly. I had a yellow there originally, but the combination here is orange plus green. Okay, 2 secondaries together. Then violet plus orange is that, and violet plus green is this one. I'll just move that up a little bit. So as you see, the result is one that's slightly more yellowy, one that's slightly more reddish, and one that's more bluish, because of what I explained there a moment ago in the combinations. So what we're going to do is add those simultaneously or together with the yellow. Okay, I'm going to start with the reddish earth we've made, because earlier on, if you remember, we started with the reddish brown, the burnt sienna color. So I'm going to start with that. So I'm going to take our yellow that we used in the last little experiment. This time I'm going to add a little bit of that, call it the reddish earth. Okay, and stir that together, and I'm going to put that there on that side. I'd like you to see that, because these will show some differences. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'll keep this piece of yellow here, just get rid of that a little bit, that's a wee bit contaminated, and then I'm going to add the orange and green combination here into the yellow, and because that's our slightly more yellowish earth, I'm going to take it over and place it there. Okay, and then finally I'll bring this down, a little lump of that down there, and use our violet and green combination, so this cold earth, if you like, and place it in there. And what becomes interesting nearly immediately, you'll see, is with yellow particularly, most colours into yellow will turn yellow to a greenish tone, a greenish sort of colour. But there you have a very interesting thing, the variations that happen within yellow when you add these secondary colours. You can see, I hope, the reddish, the yellowish, and the bluer, green blue if you like, but going towards blue. So the influence of these three colours shows when we add it to the yellows. But isn't it interesting? It's not quite the same as the result that we got when we added earth colours, the browns, if you like, the yellow ochre, the burnt sienna, and the umber, because they tend to be, they're still tend to be, they have a purity about them. But because we're using a method here on this side, our colours arguably are more subtle, if you like, but the principle's the same. In other words, if I had yellow and I said, look, I want to desaturate that yellow, I want to drain it down, and I want to keep it yellowy, well then the combination we probably use is a combination of orange and green earth. Likewise, if I have a yellow and I say I want to drain it out, but I want to make it cooler, then this would be, the combination, this violet green would be maybe the combination. And it depends on amounts. I mean, let's take this same combination, the violet green, into the yellow, and let's just do that. If I can find space here, hopefully you can see down at the bottom here. If I take that, quite a lot of yellow really, and this time, because last time we had it nearly 50-50, I think, this time you can see the tiny little touch. Watch this touch on my palette. Maybe a smidgen more, but not much. And of course, dependent on the amounts we use, we'll get, and we'll try and put that beside it. You see that? Slightly different variations, and yet that color is nowhere near. It's still different to those other colors where we added the other combinations. It still has a coolness about it that these don't, because it always will, because it contains the blues in both cases, and when we have any sort of blue going into yellow at all, then it's going to lean towards green. But it's interesting that it's not the same green, not the same earth color. So we'll have a review of that, and what I want to do is try to apply that to something now. What you find very often is that in the case of a little picture like this of an orange, okay, we're not going to reproduce this picture exactly, but we're going to use the idea of how colours behave. You can see light and shade on it, and generally speaking, when light strikes an object, and spreads across to the shady side. Generally what happens is the temperature, in other words, there are warmer colours on the bright side, cooler colours often on the other side, and highly saturated rich colours on one side, and much more grayer colours on the shady side, which makes sense. So if we were splitting this into yellowish orange, reddish orange, and bluish orange, if for want of a better word, as it goes from light to dark and warm to cold, you can see how those things are varying here. So what I did here is I made a big batch of very strong orange, really. But what I want to do is use the earth colors that we talked about in the first part of this video to see how they will change that orange. We've seen how it changed yellow, but let's see how it adjusts the orange if we want to create the illusion of shadow, if you like, and form. Okay, so what I'm going to do is use a very wild pure color first of all and say, look, here is our upper strong light area, let's say. Okay, so we'll put in a patch of that. I'll just do it as patches more than anything. So let's say that's very wild, it's very reddish. Well, let's just take a little bit of that. We know that's very rich. That's a bit more quiet. It's a wee bit more desaturated. So it's desaturated up in this top corner, but also has a yellow or tone rather than the colors on the other side. So let's add a tiny bit of our yellow ochre, okay? Just the tiniest part. Okay, I'm just going to put it on top of this. And I know you can see the difference. Do you see how that has taken that wildly sort of, orange color down just a wee tad. So I'll see if I can manage to put some more of that over that. Look, so you can see how that has become that. See that? Now it's still quite strong and maybe a bit dark, but that we're not going to get too concerned about tone today. We're looking at temperature and saturation. So let's say as we move across, you can see down this sort of quadrant towards the bottom left, that's slightly deeper in tone and ever so slightly got a redness to it. Okay, so let's see if we now take a piece of orange. Okay, we'll put a wee scoop in there and we add our red earth to it. Okay, our sienna or light red or whatever we've got, but burnt sienna is very often a good option. So mix that together and we'll place this down beside there, and you can see how we're changing it. We're just taking the richness out, but also there's still a warmth here. Okay, we can put a wee bit more in perhaps. Sorry, just see what happens there, and place that, let's say, down around here and blend that up a wee bit. Okay, so we move around, so you can see how the shadows, if you like, are catching. Maybe actually put a wee bit over here as well, just around this imaginary orange. Okay, and let's say now when we look down towards the far right hand side and to some extent the bottom here, it becomes muddier again. It's a cooler color. So let's take a little bit of yellow, or beg your pardon, orange, and get into our coldest of our earth colors, which is the umber. Okay, and also we can be quite generous because we know this area is quite dark. Okay, maybe a little bit more orange. So we're going to make a different variation here, and we're going to see how we can make that. Now I haven't added whites to any of these to vary the tone, so they're always going to be, but we'll put that around there and down near the bottom. Again, we'll blend this together a little bit there, and maybe what I'll do is, like some of the redder tone, actually I'll just clean the brush, maybe just put a little more of that reddish tone that we had, perhaps up. So we're using the red earth here, just maybe somewhere in there might be kind of nice, and we'll try to meld these together a wee bit. But what I hope you're seeing is a way to create, using those earths, how they can do the job to some extent of creating desaturation and adjusting temperature at the same time. I'm working on just plain card, which isn't primed, so it's going to be slightly it's soaking in a little bit, so it's hard to blend. But bring that shadow up here. But hopefully, what you see is how you can choose colors to create this roundness, if you like. Oh, like there's a nice deeper shadow across there. Just put that in while we're at it, and just feather that together as much as I can there. So we can see how we can work that. And then, of course, we haven't thought about tone, as in if we started to add some whites and things to that. So in other words, up here, we've got a nice rich orange, but it's very, very acidy. So if we really look, I beg your pardon, just dropped the tube of paint there. But if I was adding, let's say, into this nice rich color here, a little bit of white, you can see that it's not only desaturated, but now has, you see that lovely, add a wee bit more. So these colors that I've created by adding the earths in are giving me the subtlety to start with. So, and then by adding and changing the lightness of it, I can then create, more subtle highlights and all the rest of it, Getting slightly carried away here, I must say, so I'm going to stop soon. But, but you can see we're creating form, and the colors that we're choosing are, useful colors in terms of achieving this here. So that is how we can combine earth, browns, whatever you want to call them, with a given color, knowing that you've got a red, a yellow, and a blue version of them. Okay, what I'm going to do now is do the same exercise, but with the colors that the second batch of color we created, which was the batch created from the secondaries, the orange, the green, and the purple. So here we have the same setup as we had a moment ago. This time we've got our batch of orange, big raw, pure orange to begin with. This time what we've got are the three earth colors, neutral colors, that I mixed from secondaries. So violet and green, violet and orange and green there. You can just about see the letters on that, but it's not too important in a minute. But so in other words, we have a reddish earth there, let's call it a yellowish earth neutral and a bluish earth neutral. Okay, so we're going to follow the same sort of procedure as we did before. So I'm going to begin as I did before with bashing on, a strong pure orange just over that as a starting point. Okay, so we can see that on the upper light side of this orange. Okay, and we'll follow the same process. What we said before is down here, we got a wee bit darker, but a bit redder here and up here. Okay, so we're moving from the yellow to red to cold as we go into shadow. So what I'll begin by doing is take our orange and add a little of what we have called our reddish earth, which is this violet and orange mixed together. So we'll scoop a little bit of that in, maybe not too much to start with. Okay, and you probably gathered, it is a good idea to mix colors small amounts at a time, because it's so easy to overshoot, as I myself do in my enthusiasm. But let's see what we get here. Okay, so we have this reddish or warmish but duller tone as we go over, if you like, towards the less bright side, and a wee bit over that side, let's say. Okay, we'll throw a wee bit in, 2 blocks of that. You can see the difference between that and that. Okay, what's going on. Again, I haven't involved any white at the moment, so tonally we haven't adjusted it, but I just want to see, or let you see, what happens to the temperature and the saturation. So we've got that area. Let's now say that we're moving more to the cooler end here when we get to the darker shadows on the right hand side. So we'll go into our cooler color. So we'll make a summer orange here, pure orange. This time a wee bit of our cooler, small amount. You can see how much it changes it very, very quickly, that tiny little tad there, you know. We'll put some of that on so you can see the change in tone. I'm going to chance adding a tiny wee bit more. And we'll get that right round there. It goes up the edge as well. So, as I say, I'm working on dry card, which is not primed. So it can be a wee bit frustrating, but for this exercise, it should be okay. And we can see then our deeper shadows. So we're moving from the yellow to the red, the blue, so on. And we'll try to blend that a little bit more. And of course, the shadows underneath the orange. But for this exercise, I just want to concentrate on what's happening in the sphere of the orange. So you can see that we've created also the illusion of light and shade in the orange without having to use black or anything like that. And there is depth to the color that we do use. You know, if I add a little bit more of that blue in here for some of the very deep tones, you know, in other words, there's bits here, for instance, and we'll put a wee patch of that on and blend it in and a bit there, both of which are quite deep there, you know, and we can feather that out and feather this out a wee bit. Wipe the brush, keep moving it around, and you can see we've got another variation of tone in there and shadow and saturation. So you can get these variations, and that's two ways that we've used to create variation in tone, variation in saturation. And of course we can, as I'm doing now, add little bits of light, you know, and start to be more accurate with the tonal thing, so you can see a wee bit of light catching the top there and so on. And you can see so you can see the range. And what is interesting, because as I said before, they're not the same combinations, but do you see that's the first one we did with the earth browns, the ochre and the umber. This is the second one that we did, creating our own earths, if you like. And they're quite close, but they're not the same. You'll see slight differences. But both ways show you how you can desaturate and change the temperature of a color at the same time. Okay, folks, so what you've just seen regarding mixing colors using earth, it's not always an easy thing to grasp right away. Pardon me. So don't be overly concerned. Basically, what we're saying is we can find quicker ways to desaturate and change temperatures, you know, than what we've been doing so far. Doesn't mean those ways are perfect, but if you're out there, as I say, with a palette and your easel, let's say you're out in a landscape or whatever painting, and you need to make something change quite quickly, well, rather than going through the very systematic steps that we have done in the last couple of videos, you can use these other ways, because you can pull out an earth like an ochre or like a burnt sienna or like a raw or burnt umber. And because we now know the qualities of each of those paints, sometimes we just pull out a paint out of our bag and say, oh, that's a bit like the color I want, and that's all we want to know. But that's different from actually knowing what's in it. It's a bit like cooking, you know. One way you can look at it is, I'll grab a tin of that. I know that's the sort of flavor I want. But that's not the same as knowing, well, what's in that tin. You know, is it mixed tomatoes and garlic, or you know, what are the combinations in this tin? Because if you know the combinations, you can actually apply them to all sorts of meals. You know, oh, I need garlic, and I want something with garlic and tomato, or I want something with this and that in it. Oh, that has both. There we go. That saves us
time in a way, you know. The reason why we have to go through the first two videos is for you to understand the principles of color mixing. Now what we're trying to do is open it up a wee bit, but at the same time, make sure you know why you're doing it, that you're not just stirring a burnt umber into something because yeah, I think that might do. So you know the reason behind it. And likewise, how to mix your own earth colors, neutral colors, with secondary colors. So if you're preparing to paint something, it might be a good idea to mix uh, secondary colors together, like I did, into batches and have them on the side of your palette. And you know then as you paint, if it's a flower or something, a red flower, let's say, I think I need to desaturate it, but I don't want it to go cold. I'd like it to say reddish. But so look for your red earth color, red neutral color that you've mixed up. And it's there. So you've already made a little quick way to make adjustments and you can get on with it. You're not actually going through like the wee boxes that we did earlier. So hopefully you'll find that useful. Do try that exercise with both ways of adding color into orange. I mean, you can be any color, but you know, use the orange. I'll send you the photograph of the little orange and you can use it as a guide. Uh, but you will get some nice results and hopefully that's useful. So try that and I look forward to seeing what you all do. Okay.